Hello and welcome to this episode of Own the Journey. I'm your host, Tom Douglas, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with Chef Daniel Ernce. And we are going to hear about your wonderful story and the challenges that you have gone through to build this wonderful restaurant here in Springfield called Progress. Tell us a little bit about how you got here, what led you to make the decision to take the leap, to make a restaurant, build a restaurant, rather than just work as a chef.
So the story is a bit backwards from most. I went to school to be a writer. So I was good at it in high school. I went to college on scholarships for writing, and I thought that I would probably end up writing cookbooks for chefs because I knew that they were notoriously poor communicators.
Interesting.
And the more that I got into food and kind of surrounded myself with it, the more it kind of pulled me into it. After college, I started working at a food innovations firm here in Springfield called Food IQ, which is part of the Marlin Network. Mm-hmm. And at Food IQ, a lot of the chefs and consultants there were at the end of their kind of chef trajectory or career. And so they'd spent the past 20, 30, 40 years working in fine dining, Michelin-starred restaurants, and had tons of experience. And this was sort of their retirement gig, was to get out of the kitchen. And so I was coming into the industry as they were coming out of the industry. And so that's how I was able to learn a lot, get exposed to a lot of ideas and techniques and flavors. And through that job, I got to travel a lot, which has been really impactful on how I cook and how I perceive things. And so I was learning a lot really quickly about food and food service and the industry as a whole, and really thought I knew more than I did. And I was kind of disquieted by working on other people's projects, our clients, mm-hmm. and really thought that I wanted to cook my food. And so through a series of events, I was a regular at a bar where I met my business partner. She was the bartender. And over the course of time, me kind of expressing this want to cook what I wanted to cook, mm-hmm. She suggested, well, why don't we do a pop-up? And at the time in Springfield, there was no really underground dining or guerrilla dining or anything like that. And so we did. A lot of trials and tribulations and missteps and mistakes later, we had a pop-up dinner, kind of begging people to come because we had no reputation, no name, no following. Sure. And the next day, she thought we would do the one dinner and move on with our lives. And the next day I showed up at the bar and said, when's the next one? And so we got a lot of kind of press and traction as we started doing that because, like I said, there wasn't that scene going on in Springfield. Right. We did that for a couple of years until we had the right opportunity with the right investor to open a restaurant.
That's outstanding. And the guts and the grit that it takes to go from idea, concept, to actually making the leap, taking a risk with time, money, your life, it's not easy. What gave you the guts? What made it, or did it feel like this is just what you were supposed to do?
A little of both. A lot of ignorance. Yeah. I didn't know any better. Was a big part of it. What gave us the kind of the green light to go ahead was, initially when our investor kind of presented us with this opportunity, we said no. Because we had a good thing going on, we were all kind of living our lives and didn't. Wow.
So you actually turned an investor down at first, like you didn't want to take the money.
My gut reaction was, we're okay. Like, I've got a good thing going. Like the pop-up is going well. Like it's kind of the side hustle. And the more I sat with it, like I said, the more I kind of got pulled into the industry. And at the end of the day, I don't think there was a world in which I wasn't cooking for a living. Right. It's like Anthony Bourdain said in Kitchen Confidential, is if you can do anything else, do that. But there are certain people that are kind of destined to be in the industry, and the sort of gravitational pull of the industry, the closer you get to it, the more it pulls you into it. And so after we had our kind of initial offer to open this restaurant, we all sat with it for a while and thought about it, and the idea kind of grew on us. And individually, we had to come back and say like yes or no to make sure that we were on the same page and really wanted to jump in with both feet.
Right.
And like I said, if I had known exactly how hard it would be, my answer probably still would have been the same, but it would have taken me longer to come up with that answer.
Yeah.
But we're lucky and we're blessed to have the support and the team behind us and the investors that really believe in us and believe in the concept.
Right, 100%. Well, at the end of the day, it's all about people and empowering people and making a difference. But that seems to be, in your environment, that seems to be driven by the love of food, the love of experience. Is what really makes you excited about coming into work every day? Is it the cooking? Is it the people? Is it the both? Is it creating an experience, creating memories for people as they're in the restaurant and experiencing everything that you have to offer?
There's a lot of things that are positives about the industry that kind of get people out of bed in the morning, because it is a really difficult job.
Right.
It is very demanding. It does take a lot out of you.
You said today is going to be a 14-hour day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's no small ask of anyone.
Yeah. Which that's more common than not. But the opportunity to create is really exciting. The opportunity to work with the people I get to work with is really great. The opportunity to try and feed into people, the people I work with, the opportunity to try and grow them because they want to grow is always really exciting. And the challenges are different every day. The challenges aren't most of the time related to food. The cooking is easy. That's why most cooks or chefs got into the industry, because they liked food and they were good at it. But it's the plumbing, the maintenance, the scheduling, the figuring out all of the things that could possibly go wrong, because it all lands on your plate, and you have to figure out all of the ways to get around it or overcome it or address what situations may arise.
Right.
And so the problem-solving aspect does keep you on your toes. It can also really suck the life out of you, because at the end of the day, you want to cook.
Yeah. I can relate. I mean, the more time we're in business, the less time I get to spend doing the trade, if you will. So spending time for me with technology, with you, I'm sure it's less time in the kitchen actually cooking, more time with people, training, helping people navigate through a career, hiring 16-year-olds. Talk to us a little bit about what that's like.
The people is the hardest part of the industry, I think. Like I said, we all got in because we like food and we want to be around it and we want to cook it.
Right.
But the more you grow in your career trajectory, the less it becomes about the food and the more it becomes about all the things that surround the food. So whether that's hiring people, finding the right people, being patient enough to find the right people, and then making sure that all the people you have work well together, and how to compose the correct teams, schedule the correct teams, and then all the things that just come with working with a big team every day. And I say a big team, we've got 21 on staff, but that's still a lot of personalities to manage and understand and care about. Because if you don't care about the people that are around you every day, then they don't feel cared about. And if they don't feel cared about, then the horizon comes quickly, where it just becomes another job rather than a career. It just becomes this thing that you're going to do every day rather than something that you really care about and a passion that you want to pursue.
So how do you find the time? I mean, when you're dealing with all the demands, I mean, we know that if we're going to keep people in the workplace, we've got to spend time, we've got to invest, and they have to feel like they matter and they have to feel like you care about them. How do you find the time in your day to make those connections with people so that they do feel like that they're a part of something bigger?
I'm here a lot. I work a lot, which is draining a lot of the times.
Part of the journey.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. But, at least with my cooks, I mean, we spend 10, 12, 14 hours a day shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
And so whether or not, how much conversation goes on during the day is one thing, but that sense of camaraderie, really builds a bond. Small questions like, what'd you have for dinner last night? How's your wife? How's the girlfriend? How's the kids?
Right.
Those types of things to, invest in people. And you get to see these people every day. And
Right.
so you get to see each other's lives evolve. You get to check in with each other. You get to care about each other in ways that, most people won't understand, especially if they're not in the industry. And that's a real challenge because the industry can be really isolating because you work odd hours, you're eating dinner at midnight, you consume a lot of calories like hunched behind coolers and bent over trash cans. It's a weird life that when you put it on paper probably doesn't sound very attractive. And when you put kind of your stressors and troubles on paper to other people, a lot of times they can seem really trite. And so that's something that you and your coworkers, your team can commiserate over, can bond over, can be there to understand each other for.
Right.
Because most people won't get it, or at least won't get it in the same way that the person on your left or right will. And I use the metaphor all the time. Well, there's this metaphor of the restaurant family, and it's very much like that, but just the same way that your family can have your back and understand you and be there for you and show up for you in ways that other people won't. You also know how to push each other's buttons, and so it's choosing to do the former rather than the latter.
Right.
Every day. And sometimes, we do push each other's buttons
Sure.
and get on each other's nerves because we spend a lot of time together.
It's going to happen.
But at the end of the day, we are the ones that are going to be able to empathize and understand and support each other and help each other grow, whether personally, professionally, etc.
So your advice, as I'm hearing it, to small business owners that are navigating through their own challenges, whether that's in the restaurant industry or any others, is it takes a lot of perseverance, a lot of hard work. You have to love the people you work with, and you have to love what you do, because if you don't, you're not going to stick with it, or it's not going to feel good one way or the other. It's just going to be a battle every day.
Yeah, it still is a battle every day. I don't think I'm supernaturally talented as a cook or supernaturally creative as a person.
I think some around here would argue with that. I've heard some pretty remarkable stories.
But I do think that I have more grit and ability to endure more pain than the next guy, which I think has gotten me to where I am. And it's the grit, it's the determination, it's the willpower and the fortitude to keep going every day in spite of the laundry list of things that could be trying to get in your way or are in your way. Yeah. One of my favorite interview questions is, are you gritty? And most people will say, oh yeah, I'm gritty. Yeah. But the follow-up question to that is, well, explain to me how you exemplify grit in your day-to-day life. And that will really show, are people gritty? Because if you're not, at least in this industry, it'll cause you to falter, and we fail a lot. And it's not about failing because you're going to fail. It's inevitable. It's about how you respond to that failure. Can you get back up 99 times?
That's great advice. Great interview question as well. So culture obviously is a big part of what you're talking about, driving a successful culture and doing all of those things. And I know that it's so important to you that you've actually created a manifesto for the organization, and you have it on your website. You talk about what it means and why you do what you do, your passions. What gave you the idea? What inspired you to do that, and how has it served you?
Well, like I said, I went to college to be a writer. And so years ago, we just started putting pen to paper on what we were doing, why we were doing it, and how it would kind of be our compass or our guideposts for when we were feeling lost or when we were introducing new people to our culture. The first rule of progress is give a shit. That covers a lot of ground for us, from caring about little things to picking up a piece of trash off the floor to going out of your way to do something, and it covers things from the littlest, most basic tasks all the way up to leadership and management, giving a shit about the people that work for us and are on our teams. So it's not just about the food, it's not just about the task at hand, it's about the people you work with and the culture as a whole.
Right, and a sense of pride and belonging all the way through.
Yeah.
Well, and that translates. I mean, a lot of restaurants have not navigated through the COVID challenges and people turnover. We see restaurants all over our community, even where they're limiting their menu or they're shutting down part of their restaurant because they just can't find the staff. So share with us just a little bit, both financially, what the challenges were like going through those dynamics of COVID, how you built safety in the business and the capabilities to navigate through hard times, and then continue to do that and fight the challenges of turnover. Big question.
Big question. The industry was not really in a great place to begin with before COVID. Maybe financially it was, but not necessarily culturally. And COVID really shook everything in the restaurant industry to its core.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses didn't make it. And not just in the restaurant industry, but across the globe, there wasn't a handbook for this.
Right.
And so everyone had to do a lot of critical thinking, a lot of problem solving, a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of going with their gut, what they think is best, and just trusting that their intuition is going to lead them to the next checkpoint.
Sure.
We immediately started doing takeout, to go, things like that. During shutdown, after that, we continued to do that once we reopened and have capacity, and not necessarily, our whole staff didn't come back afterwards.
Sure.
For XYZ reasons, and it's not unique to us, it's the industry as a whole.
Right.
And there have been plenty of seasons over the past year and a half where staffing is tight, continues to be, and we have a standard that we have to uphold for ourselves.
Right.
And so that falls on the people that decided to stick with it, decided to stay in with both feet, to really pick up a lot of slack. And it has been really difficult. It's taken a lot out of the people that stayed.
Sure.
I know plenty of people that during that first phase of quarantine and shutdown, where people weren't at work, that they're like, oh man, I had a vacation. It was 12 weeks, me just not doing anything. It was a great break. For a lot of restaurant people, that wasn't the case.
Right.
There were no days off because we were on life support and just trying to scrap every day to figure out what the next move was, not knowing how long this was going to last, or when we would turn a corner, if we would. And it was a lot of just put your head down, block and tackle, and hope for a better day.
Well, when we were talking earlier, you shared with us a little bit of the story about how people come in at one level and they develop skills, and then they mature to another and they totally start over. And in our industry, we have a tendency to describe that as we promote people to the level of their incompetence. I mean, they go until they can't go, and then sometimes they have to even go back a notch because they tried to be a manager or a people leader or whatever it was. Talk to us about what you've learned through those experiences of navigating through people, and through COVID and all those challenges. It's had to make it even more difficult to get people in the organizations to start as a dishwasher and do the hard work behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think there's kind of this inherent nature in people that they want to get promoted, they want to do better.
Yes.
And at least that's the people that we try and attract and hire, is people that want to grow and want to move up in their career. And sometimes you can see the potential in people. But as a leader, it's your responsibility to not promote too early, and to only, promote the people that want to be promoted.
And how do you know? How do you know when somebody's ready not to promote them too early? I think that's great advice. I've made that mistake. How have you navigated through that?
You just have to be frank with people.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it always starts with the conversation. Is, hey, this is what I see in you. This is what I think you could do for the company. This is how I think it would improve you, improve me, improve the company. And here's what it would look like. Is that something you want? Is that something you're ready for? Does it work for you? Does it work for me? Because if it doesn't, then someone is just kind of thrown into a position that either they don't want or they're not ready for.
Right.
And both of those are kind of keys to failure, or at least can be. So I've offered people promotions and they've taken them and it's worked out. I've offered people promotions and they've said no thank you, and it's still worked out. Because I say all the time, I don't want anyone here that doesn't want to be here.
Right.
And a bad apple can spoil the bunch.
Sure.
And especially someone that is thrust into a position that they don't want to be in, or they think they want to be in, but after a while start to understand that it's not for them. Mm-hmm. And that's okay too. And like you said, taking people a step back sometimes is also the correct move.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. People grow at different speeds and different rates, and having the patience to know when someone's ready, or wait until someone's ready, or understand that they're not ready or don't want to move forward, even though they may have the potential or the skills.
They're just not ready yet. So I hear you say courageous conversation, step one, face-to-face, getting really clear on those things. When you have to take someone from a promoted position and back them down, which we've all had to kind of endure as business leaders in some form or fashion. But the challenge is always how you communicate that throughout the organization so that it doesn't look like, they failed, they suck, they're this horrible person. How do you deal with those dynamics inside? Do you own it and we made a mistake as an organization and promoted someone too early, or is it kind of case by case? How do you navigate through that to keep the culture whole in that person so that they don't feel like everybody's talking behind their back or whatever?
Mm-hmm. It's definitely different for every person because people are different.
Sure.
And you can't manage everyone the same way you would manage yourself, and you can't treat every situation with the same kind of set of guidelines.
Right.
So sometimes, for me, if something's not working, ultimately it's my fault. The buck has to stop somewhere,
Right.
and that's me. And so, first and foremost, I have to look at myself and my actions and my processes that got us here and start assessing, because it's never one person's fault. It's always, there's so many environmental factors that can go into any situation. And so you have to start kind of breaking down piece by piece, like, okay, where did we go wrong? Where did we misstep? Where did we fail to course correct? Where should I have been more patient, trained more, given more opportunity to fail, coached after those failures, all of these things. And for me, I have to take responsibility for that first and foremost, explain my perspective on it, help them realize that, it's not their fault or incompetence or incapability because, they were put in this position first and foremost because we saw potential, we believed in them, we wanted to give them this opportunity, they wanted the opportunity. And sometimes, people move too fast. Sometimes you think that they can handle more than they can. And sometimes you just have to slow down, scale back, and crawl before you can walk.
Right.
I think about kind of hierarchy of needs a lot. And if you want to get up here, well, you have to be able to fulfill all the things and climb those rungs one at a time before you get to the top.
Right. Can't skip to the top or skip levels all the way through. I think that's really sound advice. And what I heard you say is that when your team is having challenges or has failed, you start with yourself. And I think that's really powerful, but I think it's something that a lot of leaders have a hard time with. But I think the good leaders understand it, that it fundamentally is that you don't throw blame. You take a step back and you analyze the situation as a whole first to include your own performance in that environment and whether or not you set them up for success or failure. Is that kind of the approach that you take and which you've had success with?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of alluded to it a couple different times in this conversation, but the higher up you get in an organization, the more of a coach you have to be and the less of a player. And the higher up you get, the more you have to take on the role of a coach and relinquish a lot of the talent or ability or what have you that got you to that position, and shift your perspective, and you have to learn new things and get out of your comfort zone, and you have to do a lot of work and self-improvement in order to be able to coach the next person into their new position. In the putting down the ball to pick up the clipboard can be a really tough transition for a lot of people, myself not excluded.
Sure.
But for me, it's really rewarding just in a different way, because I get to continue to learn new things that, maybe I didn't get into the industry to learn, sure. But for myself, I still enjoy learning and growing personally. And so, figuring out those challenges, addressing them, identifying them, and it's still rewarding and gratifying to overcome, even though it's new situations that you maybe didn't think you were going to have to solve for.
Right. Great. Well, shifting from kind of the people and the dynamics piece of it into developing a brand and growing your organization, what were you able to do when you first started to get your name out there, and then what has worked well for you over the past few years to grow and to develop such an incredible reputation?
We're really critical of ourselves. I'm really hard on myself, as is my partner. Right. And we have to really assess ourselves and criticize ourselves before we, turn that towards our team. And we have to approach it not as criticizing our team, but as maintaining a standard. We want to be the best restaurant we can be.
Right.
What was good enough yesterday isn't good enough today. The only easy day was yesterday.
Wow.
And so it's tough to try and maintain that standard and try and keep pushing every day. But because we do that, and because we want to do that and continue to and foster that culture, it makes it easier for when I'm having an off day or XYZ person is having an off day, the rest of the team is still trying to push forward and can pull them along, lead from the back, so that when people are not feeling 100% or are going through a tough time in their personal or professional life, sure. that they have the support of everyone else behind them, because that's the culture that we've, or at least we try and foster, right. So that everyone is bought in, everyone gives a shit, everyone wants to be here, because that really helps everyone be on the same page and be focused on the same goal, rather than just a bunch of individual people trying to fulfill individual tasks.
Right. So to build the brand, you, again, shifted right back to people. So it's all about the experience. It's making sure that your team is on the same page. Everybody has the pride and the focus as an organization, as individuals, a team, and an organization, in order to create the experience that develops and builds into a reputation that has propelled you?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. You can hire an ad agency and take pretty photos and kind of have a beautiful restaurant and create this facade of quality or however you want to come across on social media. But if you don't have the ethos and the pillars to back that up in a real way when people come in, because they've seen the brand that you've put out there, the reputation that you've put out there, or that kind of exists by word of mouth, if there's not the delivery of the actual product and experience when people come in because they've seen or heard, then you're only going to have that person one time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's product quality at the end of the day. Your product, the experience, the memories you create for people, you just want that to be your brand that continues to grow and that people are happy to come back and be a part of. How do you innovate? I mean, your industry, there's constant changes. You've traveled all around the world. You have been exposed to different cultures and different types of foods. So how do you bring that to Springfield? And I mean, it's not exactly your cultural hub here. And so it's got to be a challenge at times to bring these new ideas in. How do you do it?
You have to kind of bridge the gap at times. When we first opened, I really just wanted to push the envelope hard and fast and make really kind of cerebral, intellectual food that you had to get. And I quickly realized that people don't want to get it, or they don't want to have this encyclopedic knowledge of food, or have to have a 5-minute explanation for why they should like the food. They just want it to be immediately delicious. And that's something that we think about and talk about when we're working on new dishes is, well, first and foremost, is it delicious? Do you have to understand it in order to appreciate it, or can you just put it in your mouth and go, oh, wow, that's great? That's awesome. Yeah. So that's definitely one thing. But having a balance on the menu of some dishes that are more adventurous versus some people are just going to order the burger when they come in, and that's okay. Because we see it a lot in larger groups. One or two people really wanting to go to Progress, and they really want to invite their new friends and come to the restaurant, and the new friends might not be as adventurous, and so we have some more adventurous things and some less adventurous things. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to is it delicious? Is it accessible? Is it relatable in some shape or form? And then have we trained well enough with our staff that they have the knowledge and expertise and ability to help further bridge that gap with the guest? So when a guest says, well, what is this ingredient? I haven't heard of this before. Why did you do this? That our staff can help explain that to them in a way that meets them on their level rather than presents as pretentious or esoteric.
Wow. I never even considered that. And training in your world doesn't just involve making sure you've got good customer service and that you're hitting the tables at the right frequency and that you're courteous. It gets all the way down to absolutely knowing every aspect of the food that they're serving, even if they're not in the back putting it together.
Yeah. We have a glossary for our team because, even a lot of our front of house team hasn't heard of XYZ ingredients. Even a lot of our cooks that come in that are younger, less experienced, or haven't been exposed to as much food as some of the more experienced cooks don't know what some of these ingredients or techniques are. And so we have the Progress glossary for terms and ingredients and techniques that we use, so that then the rest of our team really does know and feels comfortable with the menu and can help explain that to other people.
So how did you figure out that you needed that? When did that come? Was that something that you did from the very beginning, or was that one of those things that it's oh my gosh, we've failed here because we can't even answer these questions, we've got to put it together? Was that how insightful or not were you when it came to things like that?
It's kind of a recent development for us, and it was one of those things where you have to constantly check in with your team and ask what do you need? What tools do you need? and wants versus needs.
Sure.
We have a list in the kitchen like, oh, this is what we need to order this week. This is our wish list.
Right.
And sometimes we get the things we need because those are the tools that we need to go throughout the day.
Sure.
And then we have the wish list of like, well, this would make my life easier, and prioritizing those things. But same with our front of house team is, what tools do you need to be better at your job? And sometimes those are physical tools, and sometimes they're intellectual tools.
Nice.
We had the whole team in 2 weeks ago and sat down and did a 3-hour wine training just so everyone could feel more comfortable and be more well-rounded with what they're talking about, so that when guests have questions or we're coming up with dishes, we know what wines will pair. So that was a tool that we needed. And going back to COVID, like there's a lot more green people in the industry. The industry vets are harder to find.
Right.
And especially in Springfield, the talent pool isn't huge.
Right.
And so bringing people at a kind of greener level in, we realized we needed tools to help them succeed and learn and grow and just gain the knowledge quickly that some of us, it took 5, 10, 15 years to amass. Is how can we condense that into something that's trainable.
Right. That's awesome. So when you look out over the horizon a little bit, and you think about the next couple of years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, what's that look like for you? What's the pot of gold? What do you love when you think about the future? And what's it going to take to achieve those outcomes?
I have a lot of crazy ideas, to the dismay of some people around me.
Visionary.
Sure. I have a lot of ideas, some of them good, a lot of them bad. As far as what the future holds, who knows? Because no one saw a global pandemic coming.
Sure.
For me, I want to keep pushing forward, whether that looks like an additional concept, a different concept. We want progress to stay.
Sure.
We want progress to have a long life. But I also understand that restaurant years are like dog years, and that it is really difficult on a lot of people in a lot of ways. And so I know I can't do it all by myself.
Right.
I know that progress isn't one or two people, it's the whole team. So how can we foster a team that we can trust on a day-to-day basis to execute the vision, maintain the quality, think like we think like we don't think, be strategic, and not burn ourselves out, and create something that is going to have staying power. A lot of it comes down to myself and some of the people in the leadership team, is being able to give up control and trust other people, instill vision, course correct when we need to, continue to coach so that it's not all one person, or one person doesn't have to carry a load that over time becomes debilitating.
Right. Well, I love what you said. One of the things that stood out to me was think like you think, and I hear core values, but think like you don't think, and I hear innovation and new ideas and psychological safety within the organization, where people feel safe to come up with new ideas and things like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well done.
I love new ideas. I love bad ideas. I have a lot of them.
I do too. It's all good.
And when it comes to like menu writing, I write the new menu a dozen times, and so much of it ends up on the cutting room floor. But I like to talk about that with my cooks. I mean, like, hey, what do you want to cook next season? And we'll start kicking around ideas and dishes. And when people come up with ideas, good or bad, I love that. I love bad ideas, because it takes about 100 bad ideas before you get to a good one.
Wow.
And so the more that we can throw things at the board, the more eventually will stick.
Mm-hmm. So, last question, and I'll wrap up. When you think about all the challenges in which you've had to navigate, one of the things I'm a huge believer in is finding mentors. I'm sure there's mentors, there's people that you've turned to in your life, whether it's an actual relationship or people that you follow that have been successful in your industry. First, who are your mentors? Who's around you? Feel free to thank them if you want to give a shout out. If you don't, that's okay too. And what advice would you give to small business owners across the country, across the globe, that are trying to navigate through this and they want to find that mentor? Because we all know that many of the problems that we're trying to solve have already been solved by somebody else. We just have to find them, which is why we're putting this together in On the Journey, is to share that wealth of knowledge. What advice would you have around mentorship?
Mentorship is huge. It's where most people, especially in a craft-driven industry, have learned most of what they know. One, being able to step into that role for someone is super special and really rewarding. And sometimes you don't realize that you are someone's mentor until further down the road. Having the awareness to realize that you're in that position, that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of measure yourself in that respect. As far as my mentors go, there's a difference between a mentor and a boss.
Sure.
A boss wants you to get something done. A mentor wants to invest in you and wants to see you succeed, wants to see you grow, and has a vested interest in helping you in all these ways.
Right.
And they can be the same thing,
Sure.
But they aren't always. And I've had bosses that I've still learned from. I've had people that I've worked for that I've learned how not to do things and behaviors not to repeat. But I've had mentors that have really been patient with me, and I think that's one of the biggest things, is being patient as a mentor and as a mentee, because sometimes as a mentee, your mentor is also human.
Sure.
And also on their own path and on their own journey and trying to figure out their own story. And so having that kind of empathy and patience, I think, goes both ways. Right now, I don't know that I have a mentor per se, but the people that I look to and learn a lot from are my colleagues that either are here in the restaurant or that I've established over the years that work in other cities, countries, etc.
Right.
That know more than me, that know other things than I do. One of my colleagues, one of the smartest people I've met in a kitchen, she runs a bakery in Greece, and we bounce things off of each other all the time because she bakes and wants to know about savory and culinary. And I cook and I want to know about pastry and technique. But we also are business owners and have a lot of the same stresses and pressures, and definitely relate to each other on that level. And so having that, again, sense of camaraderie is huge. And knowing that you're not alone, even though it can very much feel like that, is huge. In finding a mentor, that's tough.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you want to look up to someone in the industry, and as we've seen time and time again over the past couple of years, there's a lot of poor behavior, there's a lot of
Bad advice
and great people out there that kind of look great in the press or on paper but really aren't. And developing personal relationships is tough in the industry, both in the industry because first and foremost we're here to work, and outside of the industry because people don't necessarily understand the lifestyle it takes to do this job.
Right.
And it's equally as tough to become a mentor, because you have to check in with yourself and figure out, do I have something to say? What do I have to say? What do I want to impart? I was reading something this morning in which a chef was talking about legacy, which is a big word, but
Sure.
What are you going to impart to someone that they're going to take on to their next job? What impact are you going to leave with someone, positive or negative?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you can be a mentor and leave a really negative impact.
Sure you can.
And so you have to have the awareness to know that you're impacting people for the better or for the worse, and you have to check in and keep yourself accountable, and have people in your corner that can keep you accountable, so that ultimately you are being the best leader you can be.
Awesome. Well, Chef Daniel, thank you so much for being with us on Own the Journey. I can't thank you enough for all the great wisdom and advice that you've given. I know that there are going to be thousands of people who appreciate it and listen to it and put it to good use. Cheers to you for owning your journey.